Good morning. Well, it's story time. Let's start this Bible study with reading about King David in the time when he sinned. In the spring of the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. Take a little quick pause. It says kings go off to war, but David stayed behind, sending Joab and his army to do his duty. So that may be a little hole in what happens next. I guess he can't go to sleep, so he just walked around the roof of his palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "Isn't this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. She had purified herself from her uncleanness. Then she went back home. Well, she knew what she did with King David was a sin because that's adultery, but man, kings was really powerful. I don't know how she was to get herself out of that situation. I don't know. That's why she'd go clean herself afterwards, after she was intercourse. So what happened next? The woman conceived and sent word to David saying, "I am pregnant." I'm not sure they say it like that back in the day, but they would summarize it too. So David sent this word to Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." And Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah sat at the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants and did not go down to his house. When David was told Uriah did not go home, he asked him, "How did you just come from a distance? Why didn't you go home?" Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my master Joab and my lord's men are camped in the open fields. How could I go to house to eat and drink and lie with my wife? Surely as you live, I would not do such a thing." So yeah, it sounds like Uriah is an honorable man. He's following duties. He's not going to go home because his other army mates was staying camped out. And also, back then there was a rule too. Israelite soldiers have no sexual relations while they were preparing for battle. So I was thinking, you were thinking about duty before pleasure. He wanted to do what it's, expected during this time, But, man, King David was trying to cover his tracks. Hoping the husband of the woman he slept with will, that Uriah will break, the rule. So King David want people to believe the child is Uriah's. But now, with this dilemma, we'll learn more about how David responds. Oh, King David, you're supposed to be man with God's heart or something, but oh yes. Then David said to him, "Stay here one more day, and tomorrow I will send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David made him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went to sleep on his mat among his master's servants. He did not go home. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it to Uriah. Sent it with Uriah. In it, he wrote, "Put Uriah in the front line where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so he will be stuck down and die." King David had way too much power. Now, to hide his sin, he had to have the husband of the woman who he committed adultery with to murder him through so-called being part of the war. But yeah, front lines is the most dangerous thing. So when Joab had the city under its siege, he put Uriah at the place where he knew the strongest defenders were. When the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite died. Joab sent David a full account of the battle. He instructed the messenger, "When you have finished giving the king this account of the battle, the king's anger may flare up, and he may ask you, 'Why did you get so close to the city to fight? Didn't you know they would shoot arrows from the wall? Who killed Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal, apparently also known as Jerubbaal, that is Gideon?'" Okay. "Didn't a woman throw an upper millstone on him from the wall, so that he died in Thebes? Why do you get so close to the wall?" If he asks about this, then say to him, "Also, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead." The messenger sent out, and then he arrived. He told David everything Joab had sent him to say. The messenger said to David, "The men overpowered us and came against us in the open, but we drove them back to the entrance to the city gate. Then the archers shot arrows at their servants from the wall, and some of the king's men died. Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead." David told the messenger, "Say this to Joab. Don't let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as another. Press the attack against the city and destroy it. Say this to encourage Joab." When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. I mean, at this point, how many wives and concubines or mistresses that he have? Like, back then, it was really popular for kings to have really more like one head wife, official queen, consort, and then other little wives, I guess, along the line. And then there's concubines or mistresses, you called, that are not really his wives. So, anyways, he's following the culture, and still he's considered a man of God's heart. I mean, there's moments he shined and be obedient to God, but other times he's still a man, and still God used him as an example that we're supposed to learn from him. Don't rush into temptation. Find a way to avoid temptation so you won't end up caving and sinning. You just have to remember the Lord to direct your steps to live life the right way. Now, starting with Nathan rebukes David in chapter 12. The Lord sent Nathan to David. When he came to him, he said, "There are two men in a certain town, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle. But the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb he had bought. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. Now, a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who had come to him. Another parable. Like Jesus did a lot of storytelling. Do you know how it's connected? Let's see how David reacts. David burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, "As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this deserves to die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity." David. Then Nathan said to David, "You are the man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave your master's house to you and your master's wives into your arms. I gave you the house of Israel and Judah, and if all this had been too little, I would have given you even more. Why did you despite the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and took his wife to be your own. You killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. Now therefore the sword will never depart from your house, because you despised me and took the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your own. This is what the Lord said. Out of your own household I'm going to bring calamity upon you. Before your very eyes I will take your wives and give them to one who is close to you. He will lie with your wives in broad daylight. You did in secret, but I will do this thing in broad daylight before all Israel." Then David said to Nathan, "I have sinned against the Lord." I guess David becoming humble at this point. Nathan replied, "The Lord has taken away your sin. You are not going to die, but because by doing this you have made the enemies of the Lord show utter contempt. The son born to you will die." Oh, poor Bathsheba, because it's hard for mothers who lose a child, and we don't even know what this child's name is, like unnamed, but anyways, it's not the important. But the next child has importance later. After Nathan had gone home, the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife had born to David, and he became ill. It's really funny how Bathsheba still considered Uriah's wife, but David pleaded with God for the child. He fasted and went into his house and spent the night lying on the ground. The elders of his household stood beside him to get him up from the ground, but he refused, and he would not eat any food with him. On the 7th day, the child died. David's servants were afraid to tell him that the child was dead. They thought, while the child was still living, we spoke to David, but he would not listen to us. How can we tell him the child is dead? He may do something desperate. David noticed that his servants were whispering among themselves, and he realized the child was dead. "Is the child dead?" he asked. "Yes," they replied, "he is dead." Then David got up from the ground after he had washed, put on his lotions, and changed his clothes. He went to the house of the Lord and worshipped. Then he went to his own house, and asked his wife to serve him food, and he ate. His servants asked him, "Why are you acting this way? While the child was alive, you fasted and wept. But now the child is dead, you get up and eat." He answered, "While the child is still alive, I fasted and wept. I thought, who knew? The Lord may be gracious to me and let the child live. But now that he is dead, why should I fast? I can bring him back again? Can I bring him back again? I will go to him, but he will not return to me." Then David comforted his wife Bathsheba. Now she's being named. Maybe the writers print out for a while Uriah's wife, because it's just, again, pointing out what David did, taking someone else's wife as his own. Back to after King David comforted Bathsheba, what happened? And he went to her and lay with her. She gave birth to a son, named him Solomon. loved him, and because the Lord loved him, he sent word through Nathan the prophet to name him Jedidiah, which means, Jedidiah means loved by the Lord. So that's story time. Next will be Psalm 51. So we have context now. Oh yeah, one question you're probably thinking, how did Prophet Nathan get away with demanding the king, you know? It's David's finest moment. This is contrary, but David, who possessed absolute power, could have had Nathan killed for his daring public confrontation, or he could have laughed him off and thrown him out of the palace. But David knew better. Nathan spoke for God, and in which may have been the greatest moment of his life, he admitted, "I've sinned against the Lord." David showed what made him a man after God's own heart. Though he was king, he humbled himself before the King of Kings. I guess that was saving grace, by staying humble and acknowledging he sinned. It took someone else to point it out, because for a while there, King David tried to hide his sin, and then he solve it by having someone else murdered to cover it. But then, anyways, okay. Well,